Going live, going live, going live. You're live. Look at that. I always wonder as it's spinning there on my side, it shows going live, going live. And you wonder, are we going to go live? Is it really going to happen? It sure is. It's happening. We are here. We are here for the pre-show of today's N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Hello, chat room. Thanks for being here. Malk got here early, everybody. He's here early, like 10 minutes early. Normally, he gets in here just as the bell goes off, just as things get rolling. But not today. No. He is here well early. Thanks for joining us, Malk. Oh, good to see everyone in the chat room. We've got all Network Plus stuff today to talk about. It's an exciting month because it is June. Not just June in general, but there are Network Plus things happening in June. We'll talk about that in a moment. I think I have a mention in here. We'll discuss. We'll have a chat. We'll see what's going on. I'm playing around with some of my camera angles. I can't say that we've done a great job here. Let's go on Do Not Disturb here while I'm thinking about it. Do Not Disturb on. And what else? We need to check. We can barely see. You can sort of see the top of the Cylons down here. I need to move this out just a little bit. It seems a little tight. This view seems just a wee bit tight. I need to come back off of it just a little bit so we can see around the edges. But that's okay. We get started at the top of the hour. So if you've tuned in live and you're wondering, what is he talking about? What is going on? And what is this camera angle? Don't worry. At the top of the hour, we really get things going. So do not worry. We will get you there. And we will absolutely talk about Network Plus today. I have all new questions, of course. And then in the second hour, I will take your questions. So if you are here online now, you can go to that link, professormesser.com/QA. That's the link where you can not only answer questions, but you can also see if you can submit questions, answer the questions that I give you and submit questions that you have. So a little bit of questions all around. It's a tab that's at the top. You should be able to see that if you visit that link. I haven't visited that link myself on my phone in quite some time, so let's give it a shot. Professor Messer, how do you spell Messer again? .com/QA. And there it is. First name. We'll put in our first name. Mine is Professor, not my real first name. It says Processor. That's not right at all. Thank you, auto mess up. I'm very sensitive to calling something a mess up. Not really. I put the whole thing down as one name. Professor Messer. Here we go. And then to continue, please create a profile. No, I'm good. We'll just save that. We're good. Oh, yeah, there it is. Where are you joining from? So the poll is open. But if you go to the top and bring open the main screen that kind of talks about this, there's a little caret at the top you click on. There is a little tab at the top where you can submit a Q&A. And I know you can't see that. You're sort of in the bird cam there, but you're sort of watching me. It's as if we're at a train station. You're sort of trying to see what I'm doing. It's that kind of thing. That's what we're doing right now. So that will get you to the questions. And then at the bottom, it says poll open. And you can click that. It'll go back to the poll. And that's how you do it. That's my demo of today. Worst demo ever. So glad to do that for you. If you do get to professormesser.com/QA, you can put your virtual pin in our non-real pin cushion map that we have here. And you can figure out where you are connecting from. A lot of us in the U.S. and Canada, but we've got some folks checking in from over in the EU. Some folks in Ireland. We got some Northern Europe. We have India. We have, do we have any Australia yet? Not yet. We'll get there, I'm sure. We've got folks all over. So this is great. What is the session ID? It doesn't matter. You go to professormesser.com/QA. That's it. That's all you need to know. Because they don't do the whole session ID on your phone thing anymore. They take you to this. But if you really wanted the session ID, it's right there in case you wanted it. So you get it both ways. You're covered. I got you both ways. If there was a place where you wanted to put in a session ID, you could do that. So that's in fact, maybe if I bring it out a little bit more, can we even fit the QR code in there? Maybe not. It's always questionable whether you want to use a QR code anyway, right? You always wonder when you're clicking through, or I do, like, is this a real QR code or am I just doing something I shouldn't be doing right now? The television told me I should use this to log into Amazon. Okay, well, I trust my television, I guess, which is my first mistake. I just went through that. I got a new TV. It's a smart TV. It is so smart that it knows nothing of me. I'm not sure how that makes me smart. Makes your TV smart. If it were really a smart TV, it would already know my login to Amazon. It would already know my login to all of the other myriad and sundry sites that we have to log into on our televisions these days. There's probably a service out there, one of you probably knows it, where you just give it one connection and it figures it all out. And if there isn't, someone should work on that right away. So thanks for joining and getting that going. Okay, that was worth it right there if we can make that happen. I think I probably had to, use my phone. You have a smart TV, you pretty much have to use a phone to connect your smart TV, because could you imagine logging into all of those different streaming services using the on-screen keyboard and remote? And some of them have a QWERTY keyboard. Some of them put the alphabet in order. Some of them will allow you to talk to it. I'm not sure if my television would allow talking to it. I think it does, but to do that, you have to first log into Google. So it doesn't let you do anything until you log in. So you can't do that until you log in. So that's it. That was my little rant about televisions as if that's a problem, which it isn't. But it was just a little bit weird yesterday as I sat there and I wasn't even watching the television. I wasn't even the one doing it. I had to do that so that other people in the house could watch the television. So after going through all of that, I'm sent out of the room gladly because I didn't want to watch what they were watching. But I went upstairs to the Xbox and I did that. So that way I'm covered. My Xbox didn't need me to log in. It didn't need a QR code. It didn't need any of those things. We got about 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 15 seconds till we get started before my nonsense that I'm talking about here. QR codes, though, are just, I see QR codes on the street on a lamppost. It has no context. It's just a QR code. Who's doing that? Don't click on that. Do not take a picture of it. Do not put your camera to it. Do not follow that link. What are you doing? No. That's a no. Actually, that was 4 no's. That was a no. Do not do that. It's a quad no. It's a bad idea. Super bad idea. That would be a good thing. Someone's probably done this. I'm just sort of talking in a stream of consciousness here, but it would be an interesting study to put QR codes in different places, college campus, downtown. Just put QR code sticker with no context, maybe put a funny little graphic in the middle, and just have it track it. And just say, thanks for clicking on the QR code in downtown at this place. That's all it needs to do. It's not malicious, but I'm curious to know how many people would do that. Are there people that would do that? And why would they do that? I don't know that I can answer the why, but I can definitely do the study, like collect the data. It would be interesting. And we could probably from there determine, well, if we had this just out in public, no context, here's how many people we could think we could infect just by doing that. That's the way to do it. No, you don't even have to put free money. You don't have to put, anything that would be enticing. In fact, that's sort of the hook, is that there's not a hook. Like they're literally scanning that QR code with zero context, which makes it even scarier, I think. All right, we're about to get started here, so I should probably start working on doing things. So I'll have to see Exactly. Oh, we're at the top of the hour. I think at this point I can choose my keynote. We want a green light. Let's get the green light going. And green light, green light. Did I hit the button? Button, green light. Yes. It is time for a live stream, everybody. Let's do this. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2024 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. I am your host, James Messer. I will be your host for this first hour. Well, I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA N10-008 Network Plus exam objectives, and you will answer these questions live and online if you are here live. Chat room has been here live, listening to me drone on for 10 minutes. Thanks for being here. Well, it's always fun to have folks that are live because you can participate that way. But even if you aren't, if you're watching this on the replay, that's fine too. Stick around because you can still follow along with our questions. You can find out what the interesting things are with the answers. And then in the second hour, you can listen into what other questions people might have, which is kind of fun too. I have for you, as we go through this, some instructions that might help you. If you are here live, pop open a new browser window and head over to this URL, professormesser.com/QA, or here, use this QR code that I've just put here. That actually is professormesser.com/QA, but that was our conversation in the pre-show about QR codes and can we trust them. So if you can't trust them, just type in professormesser.com/QA. That's as bad as it gets. If you can't trust that, I guess there's no more reason for us to really be here. Thanks for joining. See you next time. No, we're going to keep moving because I have a question for you. This is a question from a previous study group. This previous study group question asks, a network administrator is configuring 802.1q. Which of the following would be most associated with this configuration? Is it switch-to-switch trunking, network access control, quality of service, wireless authentication, or spanning tree protocol? Now, it's going to be one of these. Our standing rule as we go through these questions today is that we don't want you to answer these questions unless you happen to do it in that link that you see on the screen. So go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to answer this question. Please do not go to the chat room and put answers in the chat room. Please don't put hints in the chat room. We're going to see how well we really know this. We will come back to this question in just a bit and see if you know the answer. Make sure you lock in the answer at that URL, professormesser.com/QA. Well, thank you for being here. We do one of these study groups for Network Plus every month. We do also study groups for A Plus and Security Plus. If you ever want to know what we're doing, you can always find it on our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. When we are not here on our live stream, you can always look at our entire video course on Network Plus and all of our other courses. They are all online, every minute of every video. You can find them on our YouTube channel. It'd be great if you would even subscribe there at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have a weekly Network Plus pop quiz question. You can find that at professormesser.com/Twitter. That's what they used to call it. I'm still calling it that. And you can also find a pretty picture version of this at professormesser.com/Instagram. Instagram is where you would find that. It's a place for pictures, or so they tell me. That's what that one is. I have a lot of content to go through today, but let's start with the current state of the Network Plus certification. The current state is there is one version of the exam currently available. It is called the N10-008. That is a version number associated with an exam, and specifically the current Network Plus exam. This was a version of the exam released on September the 15th of 2021, and guess what? It goes away this year, but near the end of the year. We got some time yet. The retirement date for the N10-008 has been set by CompTIA to be December the 20th of 2024. That's this year as we sit here in June, which means you have about 6 months, 7 months or so before this version of this particular exam goes away. It's 6 months away. So December the 20th. practically 6 months. That's a lot of time because on average, it takes 2 to 3 months to study for this exam. And so I will tell you that if you are currently in the process of studying for this N10-008, keep studying. If you need to study for a version of the Network Plus exam, maybe you're just getting started, this is the version you probably should be taking. This is the one right here because that's the one that has all of the books are available, all of the study materials, all of the videos are on our course. Everything you need to pass this exam is in that N10-008 version. It's a single exam. You only have to take one. It's 90 minutes in length, and you could get a maximum of 90 questions on the exam. You could get fewer than 90, but they will max you out at 90 questions. I don't know anyone that's ever gotten 90, but they could do that because they've told you it could be a max of 90. We also have the scoring. CompTIA has an odd scoring system. It's between 100 and 900, and to pass the Network Plus exam, you need to score 720. That's a pretty good number. So you have to do pretty well on this to pass this exam. The exam itself is mostly multiple choice questions, but there are some questions that are not multiple choice that CompTIA calls performance-based questions. We'll talk more about performance-based questions in just a bit. I'll also let you know that there is a new version of the Network Plus coming. Of course there is, because they're retiring the current version, but there will be a period where you will be able to take either one of these. So there's this overlap period that CompTIA creates because in just a few days from this live event that we are sitting at on the 12th of June, on the 20th of June, CompTIA releases the N10-009, a new version of the Network Plus exam. So between June 20th and December the 20th, you get to choose which version of these that you would like to take. The N10-009 is a different set of exam objectives. There have been things that have been modified between those versions, and we could talk more detail about that later if you would like. But the thing to keep in mind is once this version of the exam is out, it will continue to be available probably through around the end of 2027. So there is a lot to think about over the coming months as you are planning to take your Network Plus certification. What's interesting about both of these versions, though, exactly the same number of minutes, exactly the same number of questions, exactly the same score, and exactly the same format for the type of questions that they ask. So you don't have to think about this as being a dramatic change. There are things that are different in the exam objectives. And so I tell people all the time, do not study for the N10-008 and go take the N10-009 exam. They are not that compatible. You will find there are things that are enough different between those two that it could potentially cost you a passing grade. So if you study for the N10-008, go take the N10-008 exam. If you study for the 009, and keep in mind there at this point there are no 009 things to study from because it's a brand new certification. But if you study from books, videos, and other study materials that have been specifically written for the 009, make sure you take the 009 exam. So don't study for the 9 and take the 8. Don't study for the 8 and take the 9. You must make sure that those things are identical. That is extremely important if you want to maximize your possibility of passing this exam. Pretty important consideration. Of course, we have N10-008 study materials on our site currently, and when the 009 is introduced, you will see 009 videos and 009 course notes and a 009 success bundle. All of that will be there, do not worry. But those things take time to produce and get out so that you can have access to those. So you might want to consider sticking with the 008 as we sit here now. We do have a set of offline tools for you, videos, audio. We've got course notes and other materials. You can find out more in our website. Go to professormesser.com/netsuccess to find out more about our Network Plus Success Bundle. I also have these live streams available. Like I said, we do them once a month. You can watch the replay of this on YouTube immediately after we're done. I hit the stop button. It does a little bit of processing on the YouTube side, and a few minutes later, you will be able to watch this entire replay. I also have an audio version of this. So if you want to listen in, I publish this in a podcast format. So you can find it on our website at professormesser.com/podcast. That is also available on a number of streaming services. So if you are a Spotify listener, for example, Simply search for Professor Messer on Spotify. You'll see me there with the top 40 hits of today. You'll also see your Professor Messer podcasts there. You can play them in a streaming form, and I really don't care where you play them or how you listen to them. Make sure that you study from all the materials you possibly can for that Network Plus exam. Find out more at professormesser.com/podcast. Another thing you'll notice that about a day after we do this live stream, suddenly, as if by magic, there will be timestamps that are in the YouTube video description so that you can easily jump to a very specific chapter on this. And we separate these out by the questions and answers that we have during this live stream. It isn't magic. It's not something that appears automatically. This is the hard work of my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. Among the other things that she does for us is listen into the replay of this, probably at 2x speed, and write down and document every bit of the important timestamps. So if this is something that you like and that you have used, make sure you give Lori a shout out in the chat room. She's probably watching that replay chat go by as she's watching this at 2x speed. And I'll talk really fast like this. You won't be able to tell anything's going on. So just my little joke. She'll give me a little message about that one. I can't wait. On their Discord server, another thing you should know about is if you are ever trying to get an answer for something, you're curious as to something you may have seen in a Network Plus video, or you just want to talk with other people who are also studying for their Network Plus exam, we have a fantastic community on our site. Make sure you visit our Discord server at professormesser.com/Discord. There's also people that will, at random times throughout the day, simply start a study session, and they can open up their own study room and study with a bunch of people without disturbing anyone else. It's a great place to meet folks as well. Find out more on our website, professormesser.com/Discord. Also let you know that eventually you will need to take this exam. That's how you get certified. And like most things in life, there is a cost associated with taking the exam. Now, you could certainly go to the CompTIA website and pay full price, or you could go to professormesser.com, get the same voucher, but not pay full price. It's already discounted at professormesser.com/vouchers. If you happen to be in the US, Canada, or the US territories, these vouchers are for you. Unfortunately, I don't have vouchers for other countries there. We have been looking into that. We'll have to see if we can't get some on our site soon. Also, if you purchase a voucher from my site, you get a free version, a free copy of something you can't buy anywhere. You can't purchase this. It is only available if you purchase a Success Bundle or a voucher on our site, and that is my Exam Hacks ebook. I have compiled a list of all of the tips and tricks that I use to study and take this exam. I even have tips in here that will help you during the exam itself to perhaps give you a couple of extra points on your final score. Find out more about that. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers, save some money on your voucher, get a free copy of my Exam Hacks, and go pass that exam. Let's go back to that question we talked about earlier. Here it is. The question asks, a network administrator is configuring 802.1q. Which of the following would be most associated with this configuration? Would it be switch-to-switch trunking, network access control, quality of service, wireless authentication, or spanning tree protocol? Let's find out what you answered. We'll stop our poll, and we can see by looking at this, 62% of you say the answer is switch-to-switch trunking. Now, I took this question from last month, and we did not get 62% on this answer, so you have either remembered this very well, or this is something you've worked on learning. Congratulations for doing such a good job. That is the right answer. Switch-to-switch trunking is what we were hoping to find. We do have other folks. 11% of you said network access control. 10% of you say wireless authentication. 10% of you also say spanning tree. And then only 5% say quality of service. So what is this .1q thing we're talking about? And that's how we talk about it in the industry. We talk about the .1q. We don't say the whole thing usually unless we want to be very specific about what we are referring to. .1q is all about trunking. Trunking is a way that we can connect switches together and maintain the VLAN separation between both of those switches. So it's a great way to have multiple physical devices, but still have separate and very specific VLANs that can communicate between those individual switches. The way that we would do that is through a picture like this. So you can see this switch up here has a VLAN 100 and a VLAN 200, which is the red and the blue. This switch also has a VLAN 100 and VLAN 200. Now we could simply connect a cable between these switches, one cable for VLAN 100, one VLAN for cable 2 or VLAN 200. Now it's great if you only have 2 VLANs, but what if you had 100 VLANs between these switches? You'd run out of interfaces. You can't plug in 100 interfaces, 100 cables between these 2 switches. What if you just plug in one cable and you simply put a little header at the very beginning of the traffic that you're sending across, telling it, oh, if you ever send anything over to that particular switch, put a little VLAN tag on it so that I know what VLAN it's supposed to go to, and that little tag will come all the way across, and when it comes across, the other switch will see the tag and say, oh, that's for VLAN 100 or that's for VLAN 200. It'll pull off the tag and send that traffic exactly to where it is supposed to go. So that's how trunking works in a very, very high level. If you were to look at a switch, this is how it looks physically, is that we've simply allocated certain interfaces on the switch to belong to a certain VLAN. And then once we do that, we create a trunk connection between those 2 switches, usually over a higher speed link. And that's where we would send all of that intra-switch communication. That's exactly what .1Q is for. 802.1Q is for switch-to-switch trunking. So notice also, this is important to me, but probably not to you. It's a capital Q, not lowercase q. That is really a specification, or it mentions, it shows that this is a full-blown specification and not a revision to an existing specification. Like we have with 802.11, for example, 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n. Those are lowercase because they are simply revisions to an existing standard. 802.1q is its own standard, and that's why it has that capital Q that is on it. So if you answered switch-to-switch trunking, got it absolutely right. That is the right answer. Network access control is not 802.1Q. You're probably thinking 802.1X. The X is going to give it to you through network access control, but we were talking here about 802.1Q is the one we were specifically referring to. That network access control and wireless authentication, probably the same X you were thinking of. Spanning tree protocol, completely different set of standards. There are a number of different standards associated with spanning tree. That's why we just tend to call it spanning tree protocol. Because if you started spelling out all of the different standards for spanning tree, we just confuse ourselves completely. And then we have quality of service, QoS, that is not associated with .1Q. So that is the one we have to remember, 802.1Q. The .1Q is for switch-to-switch trunking. So, and we should spell trunking with the Q. Let's just do that. I think that's a great suggestion by Louis in the chat room. I think that's how we should always spell it now. Just spell it wrong, and you'll remember exactly how it's supposed to work. Well, that is our rewind question of the month. Now you were able to get in. Everybody was able to answer the question. Now let's do something new. And something new as it sits here is that I have for you a performance-based question. The performance-based question is one that is not multiple choice. You know, the question we just did, that was a multiple choice question. There was a question and there were multiple answers to choose from. So the question now becomes, how can we ask you similar things, but not in that same format? What if we asked you a fill-in-the-blank format? What if we asked you to do something at a command line? What if we asked you to put things in a particular order? Maybe it was a drag-and-drop question. There are a lot of different things that you can work through as a performance-based question. So I have for you, as our first new question of the month, this performance-based question. This is one you may have to think about. This is one where I'm putting you at a command line and I want you to answer this challenge. This question is, a device on the local subnet is not responding to pings. With a single command, determine if a firewall on the remote device may be blocking ICMP requests. Boy, this one's more involved, isn't it? Now, if you think you know the answer to this, it's a single command. You would put it in here on this command prompt, and you would go to professormesser.com/QA to do this. Now, while you're doing that, I think I'm going to spin up a VM because I would like to demonstrate this live what could go wrong, right? Now, fortunately, I've already captured this as screenshots. So I'm going to start up a Windows instance. You can't see it on your side, but I'm spinning it up. Here it is. It's sort of starting up on my side. In the meantime, you can put in your answer here. A device on the local subnet is not responding to pings. With a single command, determine if a firewall on the remote device may be blocking ICMP requests. What could it be? All right, let me bring up this Windows, and I'm going to bring up my command prompt, and I'm going to leave it right here at my command prompt for now. We will come back to this Windows in just a moment. This is the device that is not responding to my pings. So we're going to maybe bring up a separate terminal screen because I'm in Mac OS here. Here's my Mac OS terminal screen. If I bring up my Windows that is not responding, I have a separate terminal screen that's on my local device. It's kind of hard to keep those correct and straight as we work through this. Now, if you think you know the answer, please use the link that you see at the bottom of your screen here. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer this question. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no just guesses out of the sky. We're all guessing. We're all trying to figure it out. But we're going to pretend that we're in the exam room and we don't have a Google. We don't have a chat room. We don't have anybody we can talk to except ourselves. So what will we type in? Now, while we're doing that, I think I'm going to sneak over at the answers. I'm going to kind of look at these. You can't see this as it's going through. And I see a number of you are putting in answers. I don't see the answer yet. I do not see the answer yet of the one command that would tell us if a firewall on the remote device may be blocking ICMP requests. Remember to read the entire question. Read the entire question so that you really know what this is. Because a lot of you, I think, are answering a particular question, but I think you're answering a question for another problem. And we'll talk about in a moment why it won't help you to do this. We'll find out in a moment. This is going to be good. As we go. In fact, this is a tool, a task, a process that we very, very commonly use in the field when we try to ping something and it doesn't respond to a ping. And we think to ourselves, is it because it's not on the network or is it because it's firewalled? Why? The command, I know some of you in the chat room are trying to speculate on what it could be. You're not saying it, but you're sort of speculating on it. I will tell you it's the same command in both Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. Ooh, so now the pressure is on. You have no excuse to, all I know is Mac OS. I can't answer it. Same command in Mac OS. So yes, so now you have no excuse. You have to figure it out. Let's go have an idea of what this is. Let's see if we can determine what the answer to this is. Now, obviously, this is a fill in the blank, so I don't have a summary of all the commands that are here, but I do have what I think is a good demonstration that I could bring up. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring up my demonstration, and we're going to see if I can make the demo work. And if it can't, I'll flip back to do this in more of an offline form. So this is a Windows device. Now, those of you familiar with Windows, you know that the Windows default firewall is always turned on, and by default, the Windows firewall will not respond to pings. So the real question here, if we do an IP config of this device, this Windows machine is 10.1.10.102. It's an internal IP address I use in my studio, 10.1.10.102. Now, what I want to do is take a device that's in my studio. This happens to be my Mac OS screen here. So I want to ping, let me bring this so we can actually see it here. I want to ping that 10.1.10.102. So I'm going to ping 10.1.10.102. And as expected, because Windows Firewall is turned on, there's no way to connect to it. It says, sorry, you can't ping it. But my question, of course, because it was timed out, remember these are on the same subnet. Since they are on the same subnet, because that was the question, a device on the local subnet is not responding to pings. Both these devices are on the same network. So it's on the same network. So is the problem that the device is turned off? That maybe did I type in the IP address incorrectly? Is it even there? Is what I was trying to say. Well, how would I be able to tell if the device was there? Well, it's because something happens prior to that ping happening. when I typed in the ping command and I hit enter, something happened behind the scenes before it even performed the ping function. Does anybody remember what that might be? It would be an address resolution protocol, because I can't communicate to anything on the network unless I know its MAC address. And I didn't type in a MAC address. I typed in an IP address, ping 10.1.10.102, and I did a ping. And I didn't get an answer. But I'm wondering, do you think maybe it was able to perform the address resolution protocol successfully? One way that you would be able to tell is to look at an ARP-A to be able to list out all of the cached ARPs that are on our network. I have quite a few devices on my network. And in fact, my ARP cache does show 10.1.10.102. That's the same address as this device. And notice that it also put a MAC address on here. I wonder what MAC address that is. Let's find out. Let's perform that IP config again and do a /all. And you will see the MAC address of this device is 001 Charlie 42 97319D. And if we look at this 001 Charlie 42 97319D, it is the same MAC address in my ARP cache. So what that tells us is, although the ping did not complete, the ARP did, which tells us the MAC address, the physical device associated with that IP address, does exist on this network. But for some reason, it is not responding to pings. For some reason. Now, this is a very common method we use all the time, especially when we are installing new equipment. We are plugging it in, we are connecting it up, and we will try to ping from that device to another machine on the network, and we won't get a response. And if you are in an enterprise network, you're in a big data center, that's not uncommon. Of course, it's not going to respond to you. We've got firewalls turned on. By default, it's not going to send you an ICMP response. It's not even going to allow the ICMP request to be received by that device. So of course, it's never going to send you a response. So what we do is, as soon as we do the ping and we see, in fact, we'll do that ping. As soon as we perform the ping and we say, oh, we're not getting a response, we will all immediately perform that ARP-A. I don't know if the command line allows me to put in a very specific IP address, 10.1.10.102, does it? No. There is a command. I think it's a -B or -C or something else. So we'll look at the entire ARP cache with an ARP-A, and 102 is in there, and we can look and see I did get a MAC address in the ARP cache, which means the ARP resolution completed, which makes me believe that this device really does exist on the network. It is plugged in. There is a 10.1.10.102. So therefore, this is the answer we were looking for. ARP-A is the response. You should be able to look at your Windows machine, find the IP address. I told you I had screenshots already ready to go. Send the ping. There it is. Let me get my head out of the way. There it is. Send the ping across. Didn't get a response. So then we can do the ARP-A. And in fact, it is exactly the same MAC address. That is your nifty little workaround to fix a problem, or at least maybe summarize what you think could be happening on the network. And here's one way to prove it, is by using the ARP-A to be able to see that. That is the answer that we were looking for. After all of that, that is the answer that we were looking for. That is the one that will tell you if a device could perhaps be blocking this because of a firewall. Now, it could be blocking this because of other things. There could be other issues going on, but as long as we get that ARP request and the ARP response and we see that information in our ARP cache, we can feel very certain that that IP address is alive, it is on our network, and we're just not able to communicate to it via ICMP. There's your answer. So if you are one of the folks who I'm gonna quickly sift through my answers I got. And near the end of the bottom, there were a number of you that did put the ARP command, specifically the ARP-A. So good for you. A lot of people put traceroute. Traceroute is the one you added to this list. We have a few problems with that. One is that there are many traceroute implementations that use ICMP to communicate. So if ICMP is blocked in some way, that could be part of the problem. The other problem we had here is that the question itself said a device on the local subnet. If you do a trace route to a device on your local network, what do you get? Nothing. There's no router in between you and the other device. So that's not going to help you either. Trace route is not your best choice to be able to do this. Your best choice would be to absolutely perform an ARP-A to see if it will show up in your ARP cache. That's the way that you would do that. It's a quick workaround if you're ever in that situation in the real world, whatever that is. So that was a little tip for you. A number of you got that one right, but now you've learned all about ARP. And if you were trying to figure out during that process what was going on behind the scenes, you should do the same test. Just spin up a Windows VM, take another connection, try to ping it. You won't be able to ping it, but what you should do on the device that you're pinging from, make sure that you perform a Wireshark or some other packet capture so that you can watch the ARP request and watch the ARP response come back. It's really telling. In fact, had I thought about it, I probably would have done that for you here. But that's something you can take with you, a little homework for learning more about the Address Resolution Protocol, or ARP. Let's now move on to another question I have for you, a multiple choice question. This multiple choice question is here, and it asks, which of the following would be the most likely result from a troubleshooting test using loopback plugs? Would it be network is highly utilized, switch network automatically prevents loops, physical interfaces are working as expected, multiple links are used as a single large data channel, or jitter values are consistently low? Here you go. Now you've got a few. Now we're back to at least making a guess. We got a 20% chance. The question again asks, which of the following would be the most likely result from a troubleshooting test using loopback plugs? Would it be the network is highly utilized, the switch network automatically prevents loops, a physical interface is working as expected, multiple links are used as a large data channel, or jitter values are consistently low? If you think you know the answer, please use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what you think this one happens to be. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will step through this and see if we can figure it out on our own. Maybe we know what this one is. Maybe we're happy now knowing what this one is. We can bounce back from that performance-based question. Those of you that got the ARP, though, got to be feeling pretty good at this point. That's always a fun task to go through. When you're trying to ping something, you don't get a response. You're wondering, oh, why am I not getting a response? Something I did? Is it something wrong? Did I mess up the network? Is the network even up and running? There's all these questions that go through your head. So the ARP-A is a very good way just to do a sanity check, just to see maybe it is there and I'm just missing it. Now, if you were pinging a device on a separate subnet, here's an extra credit while you're thinking this question over. If you're pinging a device on a separate subnet, what would you be looking at in ARP-A? What should show up, and how much information would you be able to really determine? This is the problem with ARP, of course, is that it only works on your local subnet. It's not going to give you the MAC address of a device that's on a different IP subnet. And folks in the chat room already sniffed this one out. They go, oh, it'd be the router, because it will go to your default gateway by default. And so we would need to ARP the default gateway to get its MAC address so that we could send it. So all we're really going to get is the address resolution protocol and the IP address / MAC address resolution for that default gateway, which really doesn't help us much in that particular case. So not quite the same value that we see when these two devices are on their same network. Let's see what you did with this question. It asks, which of the following would be the most likely result from a troubleshooting test using loopback plugs? The network is highly utilized. The switch network automatically prevents loops. Physical interfaces are working as expected. Multiple links are used as a single large data channel, or jitter values are consistently low. Let's see what you answered in this mix. And 60% of you say physical interfaces are working as expected. This is what we were hoping to find, because indeed that's exactly what the loopback plug does, it checks the physical interface. It verifies that physical interface is working as expected. Now, we do have other options here. 21% of you say the answer is switch network automatically prevents loops, which would possibly be true. One of the challenges you have with that, however, is that loopback plugs disconnect you from the network. So that's a case where spanning tree would prevent loops, but it would not be able to give you any information. Switch that loopback plug would not have anything to do with loops on the network. The other options, network being highly utilized, you're unplugged from the network, so that's not the case. Multiple links used as a single large data channel. We don't have multiple links. We have exactly 0 links. We've unplugged it and used the loopback. And jitter values being consistently low. Loopback plugs can be used for many different things. There are loopback plugs for serial connections, loopback plugs for Ethernet, loopback plugs for wide area network, loopback plugs for fiber. There's a lot of different loopbacks. All they really do is take all the data that's coming out of an interface and they loop it back into the interface. That's it. That's what a loopback plug does. That's its job. And you're wondering, what good is that? We just sent the data out. Why would we send the data right back in? Because we want to see if we receive exactly the same thing we sent. And if for some reason we do not receive the same information we sent on that loopback plug that you see here, then our problem is either with the plug itself or the problem is with the interface. And you probably have the choice of using multiple loopback plugs. This is a great way to do some diagnostics of the hardware so that you can really tell what's happening with that. This happens to be a very simple loopback on 2 pins. You can make much more involved loopbacks for Ethernet, for wide area network, for serial connections and others. Make sure you check the documentation for your device to determine what the best loopback configuration would be. And then you can create your own connection if you would like. Very often you can purchase loopback plugs if you happen to know the exact configuration that you're looking for. That may be an easy way to do it as well. This is exactly what we were hoping to find, and you pretty much knew this one. 60% of you were spot on with your answer. Physical interfaces are working as expected. That is what we would hope to find with a loopback plug. Let's do another question. Next on our list is this question that asks, a network administrator is enabling TCP 389 in a firewall rule base. Which of the following would this allow? Would this allow authentication, remote control, email transfers, console access, or automatic IP addressing? It's got to be one of these, right? We got 5 to choose from. A network administrator is enabling TCP 389 in a firewall rule base. Which of the following would this allow? Would it allow authentication, remote control, email transfers, console access, or automatic IP addressing? If you think you know the answer, please plug it in at the link you see here. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Let's see how you do with this one. Do you know your port numbers? How well do you know your port numbers? And by the way, this is the type of question with port numbers that you would expect to get on the exam. You will almost never, in fact, I don't think you will ever get a question on your exam that asks you for the protocol abbreviation or acronym for a particular port number. So if you're someone who is studying right now, 80 is HTTP, 443 is HTTPS. It's almost a waste of time because you're never going to get a question like that. But if you add just a little bit more to the other side of that flashcard that explains what HTTP is, when would you expect to see HTTPS? Those are the types of things that are important for you to know. So add a little bit of extra content, a little bit of extra detail, and that will help you a lot if you are studying from flashcards for things like port numbers. Let's see how well you did with this one. The question again asks, a network administrator is enabling TCP 389 in a firewall rule base. Which of the following would this allow? Would it be authentication, remote control, email transfers, console access, or automatic IP addressing? What did you choose? I want to know. 48% of you say the answer is authentication. 22% of you say remote control, 14% say email transfers, 10% say console access, and 4% say automatic IP addressing. Didn't get a majority there, but we did get a pretty close to majority. 48%, I think, is pretty much there. We could probably call it at that point. But this is one where we really do need to understand what the port number is, because you might be looking at TCP 389 and you might know the answer. You might know that the protocol commonly associated with TCP 389 is LDAP. That's it. Okay, but what does that mean? What does LDAP do? So as I mentioned, if you didn't study what is that thing, then you may have a problem answering a question like this. LDAP stands for the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, which again doesn't exactly answer our question either. Sometimes knowing the words doesn't necessarily tell you what it is. This is a sort of an example of that. We use LDAP for many different things. It's really just a way to store important data into a database that we can easily access from the network. You would think that would be something that would be relatively common, but back when we created LDAP, there was no common database format that would make sense to do this. Only in recent times have things like SQL databases become just completely normal. But back in the day, we didn't think of spinning up a SQL database just to store information about users, store information about how the network is configured, what devices are on the network, how those devices may be set up. It is really a way that you want to be able to reference information about a user, a device, or any other thing that might be on the network. So LDAP is a great place to store, for example, a username, a password, and other information about that user. So if you wanted to authenticate users on the network, they are logging into their VPN and they're typing in their username, and they're typing in their password, and they hit enter. What are we checking their username and password against? In many cases, it's an LDAP server. And in fact, one of the things you'll be familiar with if you ever get into Active Directory is that Microsoft's Active Directory also has an LDAP front end to it as well, not just a Kerberos function, but you could access the same data via this very well-known and well-used protocol, the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. So that is perfect for authentication, and that indeed is what you chose. At least 48% of you chose authentication. 22% said remote control. Remote control would be something like Microsoft's remote desktop protocol. Maybe we're using another type of well-known remote protocol to be able to do that. Remote control is usually over 3389. So it's a different set. It's close to those numbers. That sounds familiar, but it was actually a much bigger number that we have to worry about. So make sure you know the difference between LDAP and RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. We also have email transfers. I just kept it very generic. That could be SMTP, it could be POP3, it could be IMAP, a lot of different ways to do that, but neither of those use TCP 389, so it would not be email either. Console access is commonly done over SSH or Telnet, which uses port 22 and port 21 respectively. So TCP 389 wouldn't apply to console access either. And lastly, automatic IP addressing. DHCP is in charge of automatic IP addressing, and there's a couple of UDP ports that are used for that. In this case, we're talking about TCP 389, a single port, TCP 389, most commonly associated with LDAP, and LDAP is very commonly used when we are performing authentication. So if you are someone who is trying to add, remove, work with LDAP, you're probably configuring port numbers based on TCP 389. Well, as you can already tell, this Network Plus exam is a big one, and it has port numbers, it has wide area network configurations, it has network diagrams, it has security, there is troubleshooting. I have to know about networking tools, and I have to work at the command line. There's a lot to know about a lot. And if you look at our course, our Network Plus course for the N10-008, 93 videos. So that gives you some idea of just how dense this content happens to be. It is over 14 hours of content. And of course, I want you to watch all 14 hours of content, but not everybody has that type of time. Not everybody is able to look through all of that. So one of the things that I have done is take everything from all of my courses and I put it into a single document. Kind of see it a little bit there. Let's make myself a little bit larger. There it is. There's my course notes. It is a book that takes all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the important charts, and I put them in one single place. Here's what it looks like. There it is. There's the PDF version. I was showing you the physical edition, which is identical to the PDF version. In fact, if we simply look through the PDF version here real quick, you'll start to see those same colorful graphics, the details that are from the videos, the port numbers, the command lines, the important images, they're in here. So all of this that you need associated with the N10-008, they're in the course notes. So everything that you need to be able to pass your Network Plus exam is in the videos, and a quick way to reference all that is through the course notes. If you get the physical version, I will give you the digital version for free. So while you're waiting for this to arrive in your mailbox, you will be able to still study on your mobile devices, on your laptop, on your desktop, wherever you happen to be with that PDF version. And if you get the PDF version, because maybe you don't read books, maybe you don't read physical things, that PDF version can also be put on all of those, and you'll have access to those immediately to be able to work with that. Learn more about the Network Plus course notes by visiting professormesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. We have time for more questions, so let's get some more questions in. This next question from our list asks, in a router, a static route has a higher priority than one obtained from a dynamic routing protocol. Which of the following would describe this prioritization? Is that traffic shaping, gateway of last resort, trunking, administrative distance, or load balancing? In a router, a static route has a higher priority than one obtained from a dynamic routing protocol. Which of the following would describe this prioritization? Is that traffic shaping, gateway of last resort, trunking, administrative distance, or load balancing? Do you think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Some of you in the chat room have been talking about vouchers and how vouchers are used for Network Plus, especially since the N10-009 is coming out shortly. Maybe some people that want to take the 009, but you're vacillating, you're thinking, should I take the 008? Should I take the 009? Well, the good part is there is no such thing as a 008 voucher. There's no such thing as a 009 voucher. There is only a Network Plus voucher. So if you have a voucher for the Network Plus exam, you have not used this voucher yet, and you're trying to figure out which exam to take, you could take either one. That voucher will work just fine towards either exam. Now, some of you will tell me, no, if you go to the CompTIA website and you're buying the voucher, it says N10-008. It's also N10-009. In fact, there will be N10-009 vouchers on the CompTIA website on the 20th, but those vouchers are actually identical to each other. There's no difference in either of those. So that's great. You have complete flexibility. You can decide, well, you may already have a voucher. You can now make the decision, do I use this voucher for the 008 or do I use this voucher for the 009? So you've got the choice. And I think that's a nice way to do it. It also gets rid of a lot of complexity. You don't have to worry about certain vouchers being only good for certain exams. That would just be a mess. So I'm glad that it works out that way. So hopefully that's something that you can work through yourself and see if you are trying to figure out which exam to take, but you're worried about the voucher that you have. Worry no more. Your voucher is fine. You can just use it for whatever Network Plus exam you want to take. The only limitation is you must take the exam by the expiration date of your voucher. Most vouchers are good for a year, but you have to take your exam by that expiration date. Not just use the voucher by that expiration date, you actually have to take the exam by that expiration date. So it's a pretty important expiration date, just something to keep in mind. Let's see if you knew the answer to this one. The question again asks, in a router, a static route has a higher priority than one obtained from a dynamic routing protocol. Which of the following would describe this prioritization? Is it traffic shaping, gateway of last resort, trunking, administrative distance, or load balancing? Let's see what you chose. We'll lock this up. Oh, we're a little torn. We almost have an exact tie for first place. 40% of you say the answer is traffic shaping. 39% of you say the answer is administrative distance, and 12% of you say the answer is load balancing. Then we have single digits. Gateway of last resort is 4%, and trunking at 2%. I probably gave away the trunking one earlier, right? A lot of you that were here earlier knew that .1Q. We talked about .1Q. We talked about trunking. We know that probably wasn't that one. He wouldn't be that crafty to slip in another trunking question, right? And you were right. I did not. So our real question is sort of between traffic shaping and administrative distance. And the real question is, if you have two different routing protocols that hit a router, you have maybe two different dynamic routing protocols, or maybe you've configured a static route, but then you receive a dynamic route that is different. How do you choose which one you should use? How does the router know which one is the correct one? Well, it does that by setting prioritization of different routes and how those routes are discovered to begin with. And it does that through a process known as administrative distances. This is, when you get into the nuts and bolts of routing, this is an important consideration, because you will very often have routers that have the same route inside them, but point to different ways to get there. It's like walking into that convenience store. Hey, how do you get to Main Street? Well, you go down 2nd and make a left, or you go down 4th and turn right, or you could just go straight. Well, which one? Which one's the best one? Well, you have to consider the source for all three of those, and the best source is the one that you want to use. So what the router effectively does is make a list of what the sources are by what it thinks is best down to what it thinks is worst. And so here's a really good example of some default administrative distances. If you've done anything with things like Cisco routers, you've probably seen these before. I want to say this is the Cisco default administrative distance. A lot of routers use this as their defaults as well. And so here is one. If this is a link on a router that is physically connected to the router, what could be more accurate than that? That is the best possible route. If you want to get to that subnet, oh, I'm connected to it. It's local to me. This is the best administrative distance it could be, because the lower is better and 0 is the best. So if you are physically connected to the router, that's the best one. Now, what if you as the administrator went into the router and you said, anytime anybody wants to visit a certain subnet, I want them to go out this interface and I want them to go to that router over there. We're going to manually or statically set that route inside of the router. That's a pretty powerful route, because you as the administrator were the one that set it. You must have set it for a particular reason. And if that's the case, we're going to give it a very, very low number. It's not going to be 0 because it's not a locally connected route. We're going to set it to 1 because it's pretty much the best you can get, because you, the administrator, put it there. If you're the one typing it in, then that's exactly what you should use. Then there are a number of dynamic routing protocols. These are protocols where you effectively tell the routers, figure it out on your own. I'm just going to send you traffic. You figure out how to get the traffic from point A to point B. If something changes with the network, please just change the route automatically. I don't want to be involved with this. I don't want to have to type it in. I don't want to have to do static routing. It's obviously a big network. I can't directly connect everything. So you figure it out on your own. Okay, well, I'll do that through the use of EIGRP, OSPF, RIP, or other methodologies. There's other routing protocols out there you could use. So as you are using different routing protocols, they're going to have different administrative distances. EIGRP has a default administrative distance of 90, for example, and OSPF has a default administrative distance of 110. So if I get two routes in my router that are identical, one that was discovered with OSPF and one that was discovered with EIGRP, we're going to take the one that was discovered with EIGRP because it has a lower administrative distance. This is the tiebreaker. Effectively, this is the one you determine to know, I'm not sure who I'm taking orders from. This is where you take your orders from. You look at the administrative distance and it will take you to the correct route. That's what you were hoping to find in your administrative distance. So if you are one of the 39% of you that said you received a route, it has a higher priority, then how do we know what the best choice is? It's the administrative distance that makes that answer. Now, 40% of you said the answer is traffic shaping. And as far as routing protocols are concerned and the routes inside of a router, traffic shaping is irrelevant. The router has its own way of calculating the best route. During that route, there may be things that will make the traffic slow down or speed up, but that is most of the time not the concern of the router. The router is the thing the router's the convenience store. The router is the place your packet stops and asks, hey, how do I get to Main Street? And the router looks through its list and goes, well, your best route based on the administrative distance, you go that way. Okay, thanks. And you go that way until you hit the next router. And when you get to the next convenience store, you stop in and go, hi, I'm at this next convenience store. This looks a lot like the one I was just at. So how do I get to Main Street? They go, oh, you're a little bit closer. Now you need to go that way. And so that's how we use routing tables. We are simply looking up the route every time we stop through a router to determine what the best way to get there is going to be. And that is the reason that routers don't know the entire route of how you get there and back, because they don't set that. We used to do that back in the day through a method called source routing. It was lovely. And that's the reason we don't use it anymore, because it was complicated and created problems. It's so much easier if you simply tell the routers to do it on their own. You stop along every stop along the way and figure out what your next stop is going to be. So traffic shaping has nothing to do with the routing process, generally speaking. So this is not the answer we were looking for. 40% of you chose that one. Gateway of last resort is one that is based on once you go through all the routes in the routing table, if nothing matches any of the routes that are in your routing table, what do you do with this traffic? How do I get to Main Street? Everybody's like, how do you get to what's Main Street? I have never heard of Main Street before. Well, I tell you what, if no other choice is, since we don't know how to get to Main Street, just go that way until you hit a router. And when you go that way and hit a router, you can ask them. And we configure our routers this way all the time. Think about a remote site, and the only link from that remote site to the corporate office is out this one WAN connection. This is a very common config. So we configure our router, take all traffic heading outbound from this remote site, and just send it that way. What could be easier? It's the perfect static route. There are no other choices. There's not another link. There's not a redundant connection. There's not, maybe there should be, but there's not. So everything on this network, just go that way. And that's why a gateway of last resort can be valuable, but it does nothing to do with setting priorities between different routing protocols. Load balancing is one where we might send traffic out one link and send traffic out another link, and we can work between those. And there are ways within routers with certain routing protocols, OSPF is a good example of this, where certain OSPF implementations can be configured with multiple links specifically to do load balancing over these connections. It's not a completely standard configuration, but it is built into the OSPF specification, but not all routers will use it that way. So make sure you check your router configuration and router documentation. But generally speaking, load balancing does not have anything to do with which route is the best one to take if you happen to have a tie. In this case, the answer we were looking for, the one that is the correct answer, is indeed administrative distance, and about 39% of you got that one absolutely right. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to give you 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. That is something you can use to help you renew your certification. You happen to have one. We could also use the CEUs for other purposes as well. It's completely up to you. But to earn the CEU, you must follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2024 Network Plus. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Gateway of Last Resort Trunking. It's a lot of words, but that's what I want you to put there. Gateway of Last Resort Trunking. I'm sort of combining some of these together so that I have very unique terms that are showing up whenever people send me emails. So send that to me, and it takes me about a week to turn these around. Those of you that were here last week, you know that it's taken 6 days already and you've not gotten a response. So I will get some out to you, hopefully today, but it usually takes me about a week or so. Again, the process is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put something close to June 2024 Network Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Gateway of Last Resort Trunking, which makes no sense, but I know that. But that means you must have been here and you must have been listening to this and you followed the directions. So I know you must have known what was going on. And that's what earns you a webinar category CEU. You will receive a digitally signed email from me. So if you get that weird extension in the email, there's something attached to this email. That's the digital signature. And if you have PGP or GPG or something compatible with those, you could even check the digital signature against my publicly available public key. That goes into more detail than we really needed to talk about. But for those of you that stayed with me, you know what I mean. And if you want to know more about it, then you can go over and learn more on the Security Plus exam when we talk about public and private keys. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do another question because I have one here. Why wouldn't we? Next question on our list is this one, and it asks this. There's the question. There we go. There's the question. Which of the following would be most associated with a report generated by a NetFlow collector? Which of the following would be most associated with a report generated by a NetFlow collector? Would that be speed and duplex settings, firewall session drops, number of installed applications, security patch deployments, or top network conversations? Again, the question is, which of the following would be most associated with a report generated by a NetFlow collector? Would that be speed and duplex settings, firewall session drops, number of installed applications, security patch deployments, or top network conversations? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. So that should help you. The webinar category CEUs for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, you can only submit so many during a 3-year certification cycle or renewal cycle. So although I wish you could just watch 30 of these and you could renew your certification, the reality is you can do like 8, 7 or 8 or 5 or something. The CompTIA website tells you exactly how many of what category you can use for renewal. I think most people are probably just using CertMaster CE to renew. But if you want to use CEUs, a lot of you are already using CEUs. You're probably doing things in your normal job that earns you CEUs. This would be a great way to use them. So another useful thing that will help you with your renewal process. I think that might help you as well. So I've got of course, as we start stepping through and trying to figure out what the right answer is going to be with these, I think sometimes it's useful if you throw out the things it isn't. And one good thing, especially with multiple choice-based questions, is there's a chance you can guess and get it right. And the tip I will give you for your exam is always take a guess. The one thing we do know about the scoring on the exam, and we don't know a lot. CompTIA doesn't tell us about the scoring on the exam, but the one thing we've been able to figure out is that if you take a guess and you get it wrong, it's not penalizing your score. It's not taking points away from you. You don't somehow go backwards if you get something wrong. But if you leave it blank, you never get it right. The only way you can get points is if you get something right. So make sure you always take a guess. Never leave questions blank on your exam. Always put something in there. Take an educated guess of what you think it is. Never submit your exam with having a blank in these multiple choice questions. You're giving up the possibility of guessing, and you've got a 20, in some cases 25% chance of getting it right just by guessing. So why not try it? Who knows? You might get it right and get a couple extra points. And sometimes those extra points, those little bit of extra points, is the difference between passing and not passing. So make sure you use every bit of strategy you can during these exams. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would be most associated with a report generated by a NetFlow collector? Would it be speed and duplex settings, firewall session drops, number of installed applications, security patch deployments, or top network conversations? We're going to stop the poll and see how you did. And you can see that 63% of you say the answer is top network conversations, but 21% of you say the answer is speed and duplex settings, and 10% of you say it's firewall session drops. Finally, we have 2% that say security patch deployments, and less than 1% say number of installed applications. NetFlow is a pretty nifty thing to have on a network, because it is able to gather network information based on the flow of traffic going over the network. This is a standard, so if you find a NetFlow device, or there's NetFlow built into a switch, or NetFlow built into a router or a firewall, then it is something that will work with practically any NetFlow collector. And this is what we would commonly do. We would have a probe out on the network, either built into a switch or as a standalone probe. It is connected to the network, it's gathering statistics, and it's sending all of those statistics back to a centralized NetFlow collector. So it's gathering statistics that are located across your entire network in different places. Because you have all of this data now in one central collection point, you can create some pretty nifty reports. But these reports are going to be based on network communication. And really, that's it. NetFlow does not look at anything specific to a workstation. It doesn't look at the internals of your operating system. It doesn't poke into the config of your IP stack. All it's looking at is traffic flowing across the network. So it's able to create reports that, for instance, show the top 10 conversations between devices on your network. Maybe the top 10 endpoints are listed. Maybe you have different views of events that are occurring. Top 10 applications on the network by port number, for example. Or maybe it's a report, there's the top 5 applications by port number listed on the network. And then we've got other pieces on here, traffic analyzer events and other details with throughput. It's a lot of detail, but notice it's very focused on the flow of traffic. If it's in an Ethernet packet, I can probably gather some stats on it using NetFlow. So a lot of our answers here will be specific as to what you can determine based on the flow of traffic on the network. And top network conversations is exactly the one that we just saw. In fact, I had this view up that showed top 10 conversations. The top conversation on the network is this device talking to this device. And you can see exactly how much traffic has gone across the network in a particular amount of time. In fact, that device, if we scroll up, here we go. Can I do it? There we go. So on this network, during this time frame, 39.4% of the traffic on this network has been between these two IP addresses. There you go. There's your top conversation on the network because you have NetFlow. That is the right answer. 63% of you chose that one. That is exactly what we were looking for. Since NetFlow is not getting into the configuration of your device, it's not looking at your IP stack, it's not looking at your OS config, it will not be able to tell you anything about speed or duplex settings. So unfortunately, the 21% of you that chose that one did not choose the right answer from a NetFlow report. Firewall session drops, although an important statistic, is one you will probably be able to get directly from your firewall because NetFlow is not going to be able to show you drops. NetFlow is gathering information based on traffic going over your network. If traffic is dropped, then you can't report on it because you dropped it. There's a chicken and egg thing there somewhere, right? So firewall session drops, although interesting and important, probably not what you're getting from a NetFlow report. Security patch deployments, also not part of NetFlow, and number of installed applications, NetFlow has no idea how many applications are installed on your network. The answer here, the one that we even showed an example of a NetFlow report that had this, it is indeed top network conversations. That's what we were hoping for. That is the right answer. And if you chose that one, you probably are already pretty familiar what NetFlow can do for you. What NetFlow platform was that? That was a good question. We'll have to go back and look at that in just a moment. I've already scrolled away from it because I wanted to remind you that everything we've talked about today comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you have a look at those at professormesser.com/objectives. It's a great way to know exactly what's expected to you on this exam. And in fact, right now, you can download both the N10-008 objectives and the N10-009 objectives. And if you're interested in what the differences are between those, I'd be glad to tell you in the after show. Just all you have to do is ask me. I have some metrics. I have some Venn diagrams that I will be glad to put you to sleep with. Simply ask and I will be able to provide that. But these are great tools. It tells you everything you need to know. It's a great checklist before you start your studies. And before you book your exam, use this as a final checklist. See if you really have memorized everything you need to know before you walk into that exam room. This could be the difference between passing and not passing, is if you downloaded and use these objectives. They are a fantastic resource and they're free. Did I say that out loud? They're free. Make sure you are downloading these and using them. Very, very powerful. If you want to know, there are other study groups we do all the time. We're going to do another Network Plus study group next month. Of course, we do at least 4 study groups every month, 2 for A+, 1 for Network Plus, and 1 for Security Plus. And if you've been on a previous study group that we have done this month, then this is different on your screen. I'm showing you the study groups for July. Notice the dates have changed. because my world is nothing but chaos most of the time. So I'm constantly moving things around and how can we fit it in? And this is one of the months where I had to move some things around after the fact. So I told you something last week that is no longer true. The A+ study groups are July 16th and July 18th. Our next Network Plus study group is on July 23rd. And our next Security Plus study group is on next Security Plus study group is next week. Come on back on the 20th, Thursday of next week, and we'll do a Security Plus study group, and then come back on the 25th of July, and we'll do one there also in July. Why not, since we're here? This might change as well. Who knows? The only way you'll know if it changes is if you visit our calendar, because I make those updates immediately the moment I know them. So if you ever want a second-by-second breakdown of when is the next event, simply visit professormesser.com/calendar, and you will, of course, know exactly what I know, at least for the time being. And you can set your calendar accordingly. Well, although I've finished asking you questions, we're not done yet. Now's the time where you ask me questions. You can submit a question using professormesser.com/QA. There's a link there at the top of your screen. You can click the caret, bring up the separate tab on your screen, and submit any questions that you would like. I would be glad to go through those in the after show. Don't forget about our success bundle at professormesser.com/netsuccess. There's also discounted vouchers if you happen to live in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory. You can find those at professormesser.com/vouchers. Another great place to go. And of course, we've got plenty of links. If you ever want to find us on the social media, simply go to your favorite social media site by typing in professormesser.com/ the name of that site, /Discord, /YouTube, /Twitter, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, /whatever it happens to be. You'll find us if we happen to be there. And if we're not there, well, you won't find us there. So that's how that works. It's that simple. It's one also that if you are getting into and trying to figure out how do we subscribe to your YouTube channel, it's professormesser.com/YouTube. And if you like this video, that might be something you want to do so you don't miss any of these live events. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Stick around for our after show. We got a lot more coming, and I'm sure you're going to have some interesting questions for us. It's a great thing to have you here. We are not able to do these without you. Thank you so much for joining us in this first hour. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay. I think that if I bring up that camera, there we go. It's me, everybody. Let's now change our configurations on the screen. I'm going to stop this results that we have here so that if you were to look at professormesser.com/QA, that is our Q&A, question and answer. I would be glad to have your questions taken right there at that link, and you could submit questions for this second hour at any time. I will be moderating these behind the scenes, so you'll submit it and you'll hit enter and it will seem like nothing happened, but it's okay. Your question is simply back here, and I will go through the list of these to determine what we will talk about next. So there's a little bit of management done behind the scenes. I'm constantly pushing buttons and moving things around here. So the battle center that we have is all about getting information to you. So do not worry. I am busy behind the scenes here trying to figure out where these questions are and how I can answer them for you. So you can submit them, follow the link on your screen. You can submit them at any time, and I would be glad to take them from you now. Usually we get some pretty interesting questions on these and start focusing. So let's see if we can break down some of these. If you have any questions about what we've talked about so far, anything new that you would like to discuss, you can do that by submitting your question at the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in what you think you would like to submit. I have some questions here that have come in. In fact, let's get one from Danny that came in earlier. This question asks, I have renewed my Network Plus cert. My current job is not IT based. What jobs can I apply for just with that certification? I'd like to get my foot in the door and working in an IT position ASAP. So this is a pretty good Very common question that we get on our website because people are earning certifications, they're getting out of college, they are working through or trying to change jobs from one type of field to another, and they just want to get their foot in the door with IT. And that is a critical step because, as I've mentioned on other study groups, once you get into IT, you can start moving up the ranks based on availability, things you may be interested in, things your employer would like you to do. These skills that you learn throughout your jobs as you work in IT, you'll be able to build on and effectively level up relatively quickly. But you first have to get your foot in the door. So the first thing I think I would absolutely focus on is what jobs are in your area. Geographically, there can be quite a mix between what jobs might be available in the Washington, D.C. area, what jobs might be available in the Dallas area, what jobs might be available in Minneapolis. There's big differences between these geographies. This is a big country, and so things can vary widely. You may find in the D.C. area that a lot of people want Security Plus. They're not that interested in Network Plus, which, by the way, is very common in that particular geography. But you might go to Dallas and you might find a lot of folks asking for A Plus or Network Plus, or they might be asking for different certifications from other organizations. The only way you would know is if you looked at what jobs were posted out there and what employers would like from you. After all, they're the ones making these decisions. They're going to put into the job description, we would like it if you had A+, if you had Network Plus, if you had Security Plus, or whatever it happens to be. I would also tell you that it helps if you have a lot of generalized knowledge to get that first job in IT. So you mentioned here that you've renewed your Network Plus certification. That to me implies that you've had this cert for at least 3 years, but your current job's not even in IT. Maybe we should get a different strategy going. Maybe we should look at the jobs in your area, and if they happen to show a lot of A+, maybe we should start our efforts into getting an A+ to go along with this Network Plus cert. Or if you happen to be living in Maryland, DC, Virginia area, and you're in that very tight federal area of jobs, maybe all of those jobs are asking for Security Plus. So your Network Plus may be not as valuable in that particular geography. So the answer to your question may depend on where you live, and it may depend on what employers in your area may be looking for. As a lot of people also, I think, have this misunderstanding perhaps with certifications, that the certifications somehow allow you to skip other credentials, that the certifications are just as good as an AA degree or a 4-year degree or some other type of formal degree, or that you can swap them in and out for different credentials. But it doesn't work that way. When you're trying to get a job, the employers are looking at a very broad, or they're hoping for a very broad coverage from you. They would love it if you had a formal degree. They would also like it if you had industry certifications. They would also like it if you had some knowledge, maybe something that you've done in the industry that you can speak to. Do you have some practical experience? That would be great to have. And then the fourth thing that I often say, and I think a lot of people may have not even thought of this, it's very useful if you know someone who already works there. And I'm not talking like they're a family member. I mean just a professional acquaintance. This is why LinkedIn is so valuable, for example. So if you have not been to Microsoft user group meetings in your area, you should look that up right now, or when we're done here. Maybe not right now, but when we're done here, look up Microsoft user groups and go to your local Microsoft user group. Go meet those people. They're the ones working in your local area. They know about the jobs. If they don't have jobs in their company, they know about jobs in other companies. Trust me, we know this. One thing you'll find is that even in the biggest of cities, it's a relatively small group, a core of technologists. And we tend to know what's going on in other places. Oh, you're working there. You know, they're looking for people over here. Oh, I heard they're hiring over there. If you know anything about this, they're looking for some good people over there. We do that all the time in this industry. So make sure you get familiar with those folks. Ask them, hey, can I join your LinkedIn? It's good to meet you. Oh, you work over there at that big building. Yeah, I drive by that all the time. You guys must be doing great. I saw you built a new building. Let me get on your LinkedIn. Are you hiring? I'd love to send you my resume. In fact, if you do that, you should be the one to even tell people, can I send you my resume? And what you will find, I think a lot of people may not even realize this, a lot of companies will give money to their employees if they bring in a resume and end up hiring that person. They effectively use their employees as recruiters, very inexpensive recruiters at that. And for that reason, I used to work with someone like this. They took resumes from everybody because they would just take all those resumes and send them on to HR with their name on it. And if we hired that person, they got money. Really brilliant. If you think about it, they had their side hustle was their main hustle. They were able to monetize their own employer. And that's just brilliant. So whenever you tell people, can I send you my resume? You may find them saying, oh, absolutely, you can send me your resume. They may be more open to that than you may have even realized. So absolutely. Your resume these days is not a piece of paper, for those of you wondering. We don't do much with paper. I guess when you finally go to an interview, that's when you would need the piece of paper. But these days, you just send it over. Well, I'll text it to you. I'll send you an email. That is the whole way to do this. So that is why people will always say, yeah, you should absolutely send that to me. So absolutely make that happen. I think that's one of the ways to really focus on that. So if you've worked or worked hard to get some of these industry certifications, but you're not in the industry, entry-level positions tend to be the help desk, service desk, field service technician, and it may be with the Network Plus, maybe if it's a very large geography, a large city that you live in, you may be able to get an entry-level position into a NOC, Network Operations Center. And similarly, a SOC, a Security Operations Center. Those are good entry-level spots. They're good so that you get in a company, you become familiar with the people that work there, you become familiar with the processes, you become familiar with how they handle certain things, and that makes it easier for you to move up very quickly. So once you get that entry-level spot, okay, it's a low-level position. It's entry-level. We know it's low-level. We're trying to get rid of the people that don't do well, and we want to promote the people that do well. And that's why you see a lot of churn in help desk. It's built that way. We want it to be churny because we want to always keep taking the people that are good and move them up where they can do even better in the organization. Very often that also includes more money, which is the big appeal from my perspective. So it's a win-win, right? That's the way you do it. So hopefully that can give you some ideas of things that might help you if you're going through the process of all of those. We talked about these changes to the Network Plus exam. Heath is asking, well, the N10-009 comes out in just over a week on the 20th. How long will the N10-008 be available? Does it go away right after the release? Thankfully, no. CompTIA knows that there are people that have been studying for their Network Plus for months. It would be awful if we just pulled out all of the exams. You couldn't take the exam anymore, and suddenly there was a new set of exam objectives. You effectively had to start over. Well, they don't want that to happen. So they usually have about a 6-month overlap. So even though the N10-009 exam will be available on the 20th of June, you could take it on the 20th of June if you really, really wanted to, I think. That is one that is just an option because you still can continue to take the N10-008 until December the 20th. You got 6 months. So don't worry so much about things going away. As we get closer to the end of the year and closer to that December 20th retirement date, I will be talking to you about it in the study groups. I'll be telling you, oh, we got 3 months left. You got 2 months left. You got a month left, and we're pushing to get that done. I will tell you that there will be people taking the N10-008 exam on December the 20th. There always is. It's just the nature of humans. That's sort of how we work. We wait until the last minute sometimes, and this is no different. We wait until the last minute when we work through this. So my recommendation to you is don't wait until the last minute. That is not the way to do it. What you want to do is take care of it now. Focus on now. And I think that's the big important part of this. The thing that the reason I say this about the differences in these versions is there are some relatively significant changes when we move from one version of an exam to another. Sometimes this change is a 20% of the exam is different. Sometimes half of the exam is different. So what I have done is I've gotten the N10-008 exam objectives. I've also got the N10-009 exam objectives, and I went through both of these. First, I found out how many of the 008 objectives were dropped and how many topics are new so that I could do a real comparison. And what would be a better comparison than a Venn diagram? Here it is. So the N10-008 exam is the yellow circle. The N10-009 exam is the smaller circle on the right side, which is partly green and partly blue. And that's because there are differences between these two. There are approximately 590 bullets in the exam objectives, things you need to know on the N10-008 exam. The 009 exam, a little bit smaller. If you were to count up the number of bullets, 430 objectives. So effectively, it's about 27% smaller by number of objectives. So already there is a difference in size between these different exams. And part of what I've seen, and this is probably the biggest thing that people have told me about the Network Plus exam, is there's so much you have to memorize. You have to memorize all these things. So I think that decrease really speaks to CompTIA trying to make the exam more specific on topics and the way things work on the network and less about memorizing things. Now, there's still plenty to memorize. Don't worry. For those people who love memorization, there's still plenty of things you need to memorize. Don't worry. But it's a little bit less detailed, so that may help a little bit. What's interesting is that 67% of the exam, 2/3 of the exam, is identical between the two. So 2/3 of the exam objectives are the same. Well, that sort of makes sense, right? Port 443 is HTTPS on the 008. Port 443 is still HTTPS on the 009. So there's not much difference between those two. So there is quite a bit of overlap. What's interesting, though, is 1/3 of the exam, though, brand new objectives. Topics you've never seen before on the 008. Topics that don't exist on the 008. And that's why I tell people, do not study for the 008 and walk into the door to take the 009. You will have missed 1/3 of the exam. So you're not going to pass, is what I'm telling you, unless you're really, really, really lucky or really, really knowledgeable. There's so much difference between these two that I think it's probably going to be more important for you to study N10-009 if you're taking the 009 exam. If you're taking the 008 exam, study the 008 objectives. Can you imagine studying for the 009 and walking into the 008? Half of the objectives aren't even on there. So there are 300 objectives on the 008 that are exclusive to the 008 because I not only looked to see what was dropped on one side, I also looked to see what was dropped on the other side so I could really give you some accurate data associated with these. So that is my summary of the Network Plus changes. Obviously, if you want the details of those changes, I made a bunch of spreadsheets. So that's what I would probably recommend you do if you're really, really interested in this. I can't imagine this is useful at all past, well, really any time, except for someone like me who's building the videos and the content. But you've got both exam objectives available for download from the CompTIA website right now. You can look at the differences yourself. Put 008 on one side, put 009 on the other side. And you can break those down for yourself if you'd like to. And of course, we will have a 009 course. You'll start to see those videos rolled out as soon as the 009 is available. There will be course notes and other things as well. So we are, of course, going to update all of our courses so that you have the latest content, and it's not going to be rushed out. This will be something that, as always, we create this content to be accurate. It will be specific to the exam objectives. There will be nothing in the list of new content that will be something left over from the old side. So we're very focused on the objectives because CompTIA is very focused on the objectives. I would not be spending that level of detail if it didn't somehow also see that same level of detail in the exams. So that's an important part of this. Let's now take some more questions you have and see if we can answer some of these. This is a kind of a general question, but it's worth kind of talking about. Des asks, versus the Security Plus, how much harder is Network Plus and the Cybersecurity Administrator exam? So we've got three different kinds of exams in this question. We've got Network Plus, we've got Security Plus, and we've got CySA Plus. Those are the three that are listed here. And the question is a valid question, but it's a difficult one to answer. The question is, how much harder is one from the other? Well, that's how do you calculate that? How do you determine that? How do you make that? How do you put those in that particular category of what's harder and what's not harder? A lot of this revolves around, first, your specific knowledge of these topics. So are you familiar with Network Plus? Are you familiar with Security Plus? Are you familiar with the security topics that you would find in CySA Plus? If you're already familiar with some of those, one may seem easier than the other. One of the things that I really believe, especially between Network Plus and Security Plus, I would say in CySA Plus as well, I think the difficulty level of the exams is very similar between them. It's not that the exams themselves are similar to each other, but the difficulty level is. Sort of like the Olympics, when you have the divers, if someone is doing a forward somersault, the forward somersault has a particular difficulty level. And everybody who's doing a forward somersault has effectively the same challenge as everyone else. And although the topics are different, obviously Network Plus and Security Plus and CySA Plus, they don't all have a similar forward somersault, but they have their own things you have to know. And the way that those things are presented and asked of you, I think are very similar on the exams, at least in style and scope. So I don't think they are designed to be harder or easier than an other. I think they are instead focused on the objectives, and they ask you questions from the objectives that are very specific to those. Now, I think when you get into Network Plus and Security Plus, there are places that certain things may seem more difficult. For example, the Network Plus, we did at the very beginning, we did a performance-based question, and that was at the command prompt. We had to type something into the command prompt and have that give us an answer. The Security Plus exam, at least the 701 version of the Security Plus exam, has no command prompts on it. The 601 did, 701 does not. So if you were just looking at command prompts, you would say the Network Plus was harder, because there are command prompts in that one, and they're not any in Security Plus. But Security Plus asks you to do other things that are similar in complexity, but maybe aren't involved with command prompts. So this is a difficult question to put into that categorization. If you ask CompTIA, they will tell you that the path is Network Plus first, then Security Plus, then CySA Plus. And they will tell you that fundamentals of Security Plus build on those with Network Plus or with Security Plus, and then Security Plus, you build on those when you go to CySA Plus. And I think that there is some validity to that. There is some of this where you make it into that world of things. So I think if you follow that path, you will start to see it build in the things you have to know. And maybe that makes it a little bit easier if you go between them. But I probably couldn't point to one or the other and say this one is harder than the other, because it's all relative, right? And I think the difficulty level is very similar between all of them. Let's do some more questions. We have more on here. Let's see what other ones we happen to have available. Thank you, by the way, for sending those questions. If you have questions, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can submit your question. Other pieces that are here. Let's keep going through this list. So this is one, if you were trying to get into this industry, I think one of the things that you will often find is people want to get into security. Security is it's a hot topic. It is a popular topic. It's a sexy topic. It's one you hear everyone discussing on the internet. Get your cybersecurity certification. You need to learn about cybersecurity. Take our cybersecurity boot camp. It's just everywhere. But I think there are some considerations that are important surrounding what we are calling cybersecurity. So first, let's break this out. This is from Des, who asks, I'm currently in cybersecurity as an analyst. What cert roadmap do you suggest? All right, first, this is great because Des already in the cybersecurity field, already working a job as an analyst in the term here, cybersecurity. My question, whenever somebody says, I work in cybersecurity, my standard follow-up is, what does that mean? Because the term cybersecurity doesn't have a definition. It's just this generic term we have for security that has something to do with technology. Just there's no specific to it. When we talk about Security Plus, CySA Plus, CASP, and a lot of the industry security certifications that CompTIA has, we're really focusing on IT security. So if you are someone who is configuring and setting up firewalls, you are designing and implementing VPNs, you are setting up authentication systems, you are setting up and configuring firewall rules, you are working with a SIM to be able to create reports on all of these things, you're keeping data safe, you're keeping users safe, you're keeping the company information safe, you're in IT security. That's what that does. That's what that is. That is IT security. Now, there's other cybersecurity roles in the industry. For example, if you are in computer science, for example, you may be creating new applications and you may be building those applications to be secure. Well, there's a cybersecurity aspect to that, but those are two different worlds. If you're building applications, you're not in IT. If you're in IT, you're not building applications. So those are two different things, at least in the way that we categorize them here. IT is the world where we are maintaining and protecting our network. And computer science is the world where we are building applications, we are writing apps, and we are spending all of our time coding, if you will. So that's the idea. Now, what you will see online is that people will tell you, start your technology pathway in cybersecurity. But if you were to look at the jobs that were available out there, very few entry-level jobs are cybersecurity jobs. Relative to all of the other jobs available, cybersecurity is the very small circle in the very large Venn diagram of entry-level jobs. Now, people will often send me an email saying, stop saying there are no cybersecurity entry-level jobs. Never said it. So I will absolutely stop saying that because I never started saying that. There are some entry-level security jobs out there, IT security jobs. I mentioned one earlier. If you work in a large geographic area, some of these big companies often have security operations centers or SOCs, and SOCs are a great entry-level position into the world of IT security. And maybe that will then give you skills and things you can use to move up from there. It is not the most common way to work or get into the field of IT security. The most common path that gets you into IT security, and I'm going to speak as someone who worked in the IT security field as a systems engineer focusing on next generation firewalls. I spoke with and met with hundreds and hundreds of companies, the highest level of security people in their organizations, in some of the biggest companies in the world. And I will tell you the most common path to get those security people at the highest levels of those huge companies that are out there, those Fortune 100 companies, is they started down with systems with systems management, with systems administration, with operating systems management. They moved into the networking side. So they were switch administration, router administration, designing networks, building out networks, wide area network capabilities. These days, SD-WAN connectivity, cloud-based networking connectivity. They're the ones that were building the roads and putting traffic on those roads and driving the traffic on those roads. And then on the upper side of that, once you have this foundation in operating systems, once you have built on that foundation into understanding the network at a protocol level and a design level, you are now ready to level up into the world of IT security. That is the way that the majority of people in IT security got there. It wasn't an entry level, they walked in and they've been working IT security their entire career. Very few people are like that. Almost everybody in those worlds started learning this, because how are you supposed to secure the systems if you have no idea how the systems work? How are you supposed to secure the network if you have no idea how the network works? That's your challenge. And no one wants to put you in a position where you will be managing the security of those devices unless you have a foundation in those devices. So I would highly recommend that you start working along those lines of building the foundation. There are no entry-level positions in penetration testing. There are no entry-level positions in forensics because those worlds really require a much more detailed knowledge of operating systems and networks and security that you need to build on. You are not going to be starting those positions right out of school. It doesn't work that way. So if you're trying, and I know some of you out there, you're in a field right now, or you're taking a series of formal degrees in cybersecurity. Well, that's great. And you will be able to use that knowledge eventually. But then again, I have a degree in business management, and I spent my entire career in IT. So sometimes the degree is not necessarily what you end up doing or even your focus. But there are things that in that degree that you're able to pull from and use. And I think that's an important thing to consider. I'm certainly using some of the business side now. It only took 30 years. What a good investment into my degree. Didn't help me a bit for my jobs, but it helped me quite a bit afterwards. You just never know how this will ever work out. Now, if you go look at online, there are plenty of places that are happy to take you through a cybersecurity boot camp. Come with us for 1 week and we'll teach you everything you need to know to pass your Security Plus. No, they won't, because there's no way to teach you everything you need to know in 1 week. Physically, because laws of physics prevent you from learning everything you would need to know to pass your Security Plus in 1 week. It simply doesn't work. You can't do it. If you stayed up the entire time and you didn't sleep, you still wouldn't have enough time to learn everything you needed to know to pass your Security Plus exam. So I think there's a disconnect in our industry about what credentials you need to get into those roles. And I think security is probably the one that most people misrepresent. So you have to be very careful about that. But go look at the jobs in your area and set up for yourself a strategy. Look at the jobs in your area and go find a security analyst position. Go find a security systems administrator, an IT security administrator job, something along those lines. See what they're asking for. And they're going to list there, you need to have this many years of knowledge in this. You need to have a knowledge of that. You need this type of certification. Be things you never saw before. Now you can work backwards from that. Well, it said I needed this much knowledge in networking. Let's see what the networking jobs that they would hire from. Let's see what they require. So now let's do another job search for network administrator, network designer. What do they need? Well, they need this and they need that. And they need the Cisco and they need the Network Plus and they need this thing here. They go through another set of requirements. Okay, well, it said I needed to get into that job. I need to know these things. Now we can take another step back and you're effectively reverse engineering your path into IT security. And now you have a strategy. Now you have a place you can start and then begin at least having some idea of some paths that will get there. One of the things that's great in IT, and it's a little bit different than other places and other vertical markets, if you will, is that there is not a single path. There's not a single thing you can do that automatically gets you into that role. If you were in medicine, you went to a 4-year degree, 4-year college, you got a degree in nursing. What you go to is you go get a nursing license. You take the nursing board exams and you pass the exam so that you are a registered nurse in that state. And now you are qualified to work as a nurse at any hospital. So there is a very clear path you have to take. If you went to law school, you have to take the bar exam in your state. And once you pass the bar exam, you can now go to court and represent people in the court in that state. So there's a path there, and it's a very obvious path. IT doesn't have that. And I think a lot of people think that it does, that they get into it, they take their A+, they start sending out resumes, and they go, I'm sending out resumes, and my past experience in agriculture, for some reason, aren't getting me any callbacks, but I have the A+. What more would you need? It's right here, A+. Well, you need a lot more than A+. There is no easy button. There's no, if you get this cert, you skip the line kind of scenario. You have to put together a comprehensive foundation in technology to present to a prospective employer to show that you are someone who is worth hiring. And there's no way around any of these requirements. You can't replace one with the other. I see people asking all the time, Reddit's a very good example of this. They go, well, I've got these certs. How many years of college does that knock off? 0. The answer is 0. Doesn't knock off any college. So I think I can appreciate wanting that, and I can appreciate that it's got to count for something. It does count for something. But the thing that it counts for is itself a thing. Industry certifications is a thing. Industry certifications doesn't replace your experience. Industry certifications doesn't replace your formal education. And none of those things are better or worse than any others. Some employers would like you to have experience. Some employers don't care if you have experience. And so it sometimes is frustrating to see people say that this one thing is more important than anything else. Experience is more important than anything else. Well, it might be in one scenario, but it might not be in another. Because some employers would rather hire someone with less experience. Guess why? Because they cost less. That's why. And they will train you as you go. Other places don't have time for that. They want somebody in that role that already know what they're doing. They're going to pay more money and get somebody with more experience. So maybe that's what they mean, that experience is more important because there's guaranteed money, but there's also jobs out here if you don't have experience. What does that tell you? They're not going to hire someone with experience. You cost too much. You're too expensive. So that's why I tell people, don't worry so much about making it easy or trying to skip over things. You should start hoarding. You need to gather in all of these things. You need to gather in some experience. You need to gather in some formal education. I need to keep a big box full of industry certifications. That would be the best approach. And that would be the one that you would then apply back to the job postings in your geographical area to see which one of those things is the most important for that particular hiring manager. Whew. See, nothing's easy, but you have to set up a strategy. And your strategy needs to be better than other people's strategy, because this is a competition. They're going to want those jobs. It's a natural progression. In fact, might as well go through it now, is over these next number of months, people will tell me, well, I'm not going to go take this version of the exam. I'll wait till the new version comes out. Why would you do that? Because the people that are working right now on the current version of the exam, they're going to get certified now. They're going to already have their certification in their pocket, and they're going to go get the job you wish you had. Why are you waiting? Why would you ever wait to get certified? Makes no sense. You are doing yourself a disservice. There's no value. It's the same cert, by the way, when you pass the new exam. That's right. When you pass the N10-008, you get a Network Plus exam certification. When you pass the N10-009, you get a Network Plus exam certification. You get the identical cert. There's no difference between the two. And employers don't care either. They want you to be Network Plus certified. They don't care how you got Network Plus certified. They just need you to be Network Plus certified. So another important consideration when you're looking at jobs and trying to figure out, what do I do? Well, I'll just skip college. I'll just do certs. Can't do that. No. Don't do that. You need formal education. You need industry certifications. You need some type of practical experience, and you need to know someone who works there. Those are your 4 things. You do those 4 things, you are in a better position to get that job than anyone else who may be applying. Just make sure you get all 4 of those, and you're good. Let's do some more questions. We have a little bit of time, so let's skip through a couple of others in this list. Next one's on the list. Let's see. This is the one I think if you're kind of focusing in on this, we were talking about entry level and trying to get that working there. You will see this all the time. Joshua brings this up, and it's so true. Joshua says, what is the best job to get your foot in the door? I've seen associate, entry level, but these associate and entry level positions say they require 3 years of experience. I have the networking knowledge, but I cannot learn to physically apply it in an actual workspace. You need the job first. It's that catch-22 that you always see. We want someone experienced, but we want to fill this entry-level position, and the entry-level position has to come from people that have experience. Well, wait, if I don't have the job, how do I get the experience? And if I have the experience, how am I supposed to do that? You got to first you got to hire me first, then I will have experience. And I think a lot of this revolves around what people consider to be an entry-level position. The term varies depending on who you talk to, but I think we've already kind of gone through it a little bit in this live stream, is that entry-level in the world of IT security is not starting at the bottom level. It's entry level into IT security. It implies that you've already been working as someone very knowledgeable and building up knowledge in operating systems. You've already been working and have built up a knowledge in networking. And now your entry into IT security will take into account those many years of experience that you've accumulated. So I think a lot of people read entry level as starting at the bottom of everything, when in reality, it means starting at the bottom of this particular area of IT, which is very different. So that's why it sometimes can be confusing when you look at these job positions that say, this is an entry-level associate security engineer, a junior security engineer, a junior security analyst, an entry-level security analyst. And they're not talking about someone out of college that has never worked in IT. They're talking about someone who already has accumulated knowledge in IT, and this is their first foray into security. So it's important to make those delineations as you are going through and looking at these job postings and you'll be able to tell, because it will tell you, oh, this job requires 3 years of experience. You know immediately, oh, okay, this is not someone just off the street who just learned and got their degree. They want somebody who's already done this for a while and being able to work on that. A lot of folks said that, that experience is important. I think what most people say is experience is better than anything else you would ever do, which is not necessarily true, but there is absolutely value in being experienced. There's absolute value in having the job and getting your foot in the door. And that's why I tell people that it's not just about what you know, it really is about also who you know. And if you've not created these relationships, you've not built these friendships and knowledge of people in the industry and kept up with what they were doing and been part of their LinkedIn and asked questions and met them at the study groups and met them at the user group meetings and saw them at the trade shows, then you're not doing this right, because that's where you get these jobs, by the way. I think I've mentioned in other study groups, in my career, my IT career of me working for other people, other companies, I probably had about 10 different IT jobs. Some of those IT jobs were working with a company, and then I moved up from help desk to networking team. You know, that was a different job, but it was with the same company. So I haven't worked with 10 different companies, but I have worked at least 10 different jobs. I think it's probably a little more than that. But I've had 10 different positions through my career. We'll put it that way. And when you start looking at those, the very first job I got in IT, I didn't know anybody. In fact, I was sort of working, I was in college. I was working at the College Computing Center, which at the time was all mainframes. I learned a lot about supercomputing and liquid nitrogen cooled supercomputers and cryogenerators and big printers and plotters and tape drives and spinning hard drives. It was amazing technology to work in. But I didn't know anyone in the industry other than that group. And it was in my college town. But I wanted to go somewhere else. I wanted to go to a bigger city and find more IT related positions, but I knew no one, nobody out there. I just started interviewing everywhere. And I happened to somehow, for some reason, this very small computing company in South Miami was at my college and they were looking for people, and somehow we connected and they decided to hire me. And I was making a total of $19,500 a year working as a field service technician out of a very small storefront in South Miami. What I didn't realize at the time is this very small storefront in South Miami had the exclusive contract for all computers, all desktop PCs and laptop PCs for Miami-Dade County government. So this was a couple of PCs, a couple of thousands, hundreds of thousands of computers. It was a lot of equipment. And so I was the field service technician for those particular positions, among other customers that this place had. So this was, even though you drive up and you're thinking, this is just a tiny little computer store. Oh, no. These people were making bank. They were rolling. They had it going on, and they had some great contracts, and they were good people to work with. Even to today, they continued to be successful and even spun out and created these monster companies later on. I didn't realize it at the time that was going to happen, but they were able to make that happen. So I got that first job just on a whim. They just trusted that I would be the right person. And I guess, quite honestly, if it didn't work out, they just fire me and hire someone else at 19.5. So it wasn't like they were paying me a ton of cash, but it was enough to live on at the time. But it was one where I didn't know anyone. But because I was the field service technician, I was the one that went out, and I was the face of the company when I show up. Like, oh, you guys called about a thing. I have this thing with me. Or you called about fixing this thing. I've come to fix the thing. That was my job. And I've got my toolkit, and I've got my bag, and I've got my suitcase. I've got my briefcase. We'll go do this. We'll make it happen. I'll swap out the drive. I'll replace the memory. I'll do a motherboard exchange. Whatever we need to do, we'll get this working. So that's what I did. And I got to meet a lot of people. And so for every job in IT I ever got after that very first job getting in the door, every job I ever got from that point on, I knew someone who worked there. In many cases, that was the person hiring me who worked there. That's the value of knowing people in the industry. Did this without LinkedIn at the time. This is where you really had to meet people and put them in your contact list. You put them in your Palm Pilot. You put them in your, what was the one before Palm Pilot? Somebody. I had one of those. What was it? We gave it a name. It had a name. It's like Edgar. It was in my Edgar. What was it? Oh, this is the beauty of going back so far. Palm Pilot was good enough. I should have just stopped there, right? So that was the beauty, though, of knowing these folks. It wasn't Rolodex. It wasn't a PDA. It had a name. I'll figure it out. Don't worry. It's probably around here somewhere. The idea, though, is that you collect these connections. You collect this, you're networking, but with people. And that's the important part, is to make that network. There was a question earlier in the live stream chat where someone asked, it was Ninja said, when should I start my LinkedIn? Right now. You should have already built your account. Go get it. Go start it. Even if nobody is connected to you yet, start posting things. I'll just set up a VM with a firewall, and I just found somebody trying to attack my network. Here's a picture of it. Boom. Put it on there. Wasn't the Palm. That was Palm Pilot. Before that. It was before that. I will figure it out. It's going to drive me crazy until we're done. And you know when I'm going to know? You know when it's going to hit me? When I stop the stream. That's when it's going to hit me. It's when they always hit me. But that's where I think you should right now make your LinkedIn. And when you meet people at these Microsoft user group meeting, Cisco user group meeting, Palo Alto Networks user group meeting, you say, hey, I'd love to, it was great meeting you. Can I send you a LinkedIn request? Which I think is a nice thing to say, by the way, because I hate getting a LinkedIn request from a random person. In fact, I don't link in that way. In fact, if you were to look at my LinkedIn profile, everyone I am linked in with are people that I have worked with, people that I have shaken their hand. I've worked with them either as a customer, or I've worked with them with companies that I have been part of. I never add people that I just meet randomly. That's for Facebook, I guess, or some other way. But LinkedIn for me is now much more focused on knowing who they are. And meeting somebody at a user group meeting, they can go on my LinkedIn. Meeting somebody who works at that company as doing that job, they definitely go on my LinkedIn. I've met them. I know their face. I'm familiar with where they work. It is a professional acquaintance, if you will. And I think that's a great way to do it. Let's focus on that. No, BlackBerry was after the Palm Pilot. I love when the chat room's with me. They're trying to figure it out. It was a fold over. I can still see it. It's LCD, no color. It was well before Palm Pilot. We'll figure it out. I will hunt it down. I will find it. We will figure it out. I'm now going to Google PDA history, just so what is a personal digital assistant? It actually has the breakdown by number of years that are on here. We're going to break this all the way. What a mess. It is just what a horrible, horrible article to have this here. Keep reading about now. Just when you think you found the right page, even the Google preview kind of gives you a feel for this. And there are some HPs out here. The name just escapes me though for these digital assistants. The good part is we don't have to worry about that anymore. Everything's done in our phone. Our phone is our digital assistant, and we can have direct contacts if we want to. But I think for many of us, the perfect spot really is LinkedIn. Now, like anything else, LinkedIn it can be a mess. Sometimes the people you add, the things you have to sift through are ponderous. Sometimes it's just a bunch of people. Just look at me. I'm awesome. And here's how I'm awesome. And you could be awesome too. Well, okay. There's some value to that, I guess. But it can get ponderous very quickly. So I don't tend to focus on that side of it. But there are a lot of people that have gotten their jobs by posting the things they do in their lab, in working through their in VMs they build out on their workstations, things they discover sometimes accidentally, and they just want to share it with other people. Even if you think it's been covered elsewhere, even if there's an article or a YouTube video somewhere else of this, you found it. It's on your network with the VM you created or the firewall that you plugged in or the report that you created. Those are great things to share with others. And they're things that employers will look through. For better or worse, employers do a lot of this these days, is they really do go through your personal online history. One of the things that I think was kind of funny with a lot of folks who work in the world of technology is we all have this online footprint. But I've met people, even most recently, they're in college. They don't have a Facebook page. They don't have a Twitter. They don't have a LinkedIn. They have no online footprint at all. And I have to wonder, is that good? Because it sounds good, but maybe it's not good. Maybe there's a bad part of that that you would run into. So I think maybe sometimes being too off the grid might be to your detriment. I think there might be some benefit to at least having a LinkedIn, if nothing else. So I think that's where you should focus. As I've kind of scrolled through, as we've been talking, I've kind of scrolled through the world of PDAs, personal digital assistants online, and I see no reference to the device that I was using prior to my Palm Pilot. I cannot find it. It is driving me crazy. Every reference, every article really starts it when we've had color screens. Like, no, this is way before color screens. It was like a Game Boy, but it was a PDA. It was that level of complexity that we were working through. So I think for those of you back in the day that it had phone numbers, address information, and a name, and I could search. And I could find what I was looking for. That's what it wasn't a BlackBerry. I still have my BlackBerries. I don't have them around. Stuck them in a box somewhere recently. But it was nice seeing, it's still here. And some of the things still powered up. I can still power up my old Windows PDA to be able to do that. It was not a pager. Nope. Page. It had no communications functionality whatsoever. You could back it up. I think there was a serial connection on it, and they had really bad software that allowed you to sync that onto the system. But that's a very good example of technology. You just sort of lose it over time. It just kind of disappears through the ether. It's another example of just a time we don't even think about anymore. Let's go back to questions that you have. I need to go back to but Joshua, I think that kind of covers the idea. I kind of got stuck over here on the world of PDAs and working through them. But hopefully it's giving you some ideas of how you can take this idea of I'm in the industry, but I'm not in the industry. How do I make these relationships? How do I find those entry-level positions that are truly entry-level? And it's usually going to be help desk, service desk, that type of thing. It's not Apple Newton. It's not BlackBerry. There wasn't a touch screen. There wasn't a stylus. We didn't have that. It was buttons. It was like the old football game that was all LEDs. It was that level of complexity. You're putting way too much technology into this. This was dinosaurs ruled the earth. There was no network, worldwide internet to connect to. There was none of those. Everybody had a different way to do it. It was hard to take people's contacts and move them from machine to machine. It was awful back in the day. It was tough because some people would collect hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of contacts, and then they would want to move from this device to that device. How do you even do it? How do you even make that happen? So it's one of those situations. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do a couple more into this list. Let's take this one from Anonymous, because this is also a common question I get, and I think it's worth talking about. There's some good stuff here. Chat room, you haven't hit it yet. Just so some of y'all wondering. It was a much broader term. I wish I could find it out. Anonymous asks, I failed my Network Plus 2 times. It's okay. I have also failed industry certification exams more than twice. No, twice. I got passed on the third time. It's a long story, and we can talk about it some other time. Continuing with the question, I'm feeling extremely discouraged. Do not. The benefit, of course, of this is you're exactly where you were before you take your first exam. Nothing's changed. You're fine. So that's a really good example of if you fail a certification exam, guess what happens? Nothing. The world continues to turn. Nobody died. It's exactly the way it was before you took the exam. The only difference is you're out a few bucks. That's kind of a pain. I'm with you on that one, but it's not enough to be extremely discouraged about. The good part is now you know how the exam is structured. You have a good feel for the process of going to take the exam. A lot of the anxiety associated with that is gone now. So all you're out is some money, which you can make more money. So that part's good. Question here is, I've watched your playlist twice, used other resources. Do you have advice on studying and study habits? I think at that point that you focus on the objectives. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. Let's pull up the exam objectives. Here's what I would recommend you do. So here are the Network Plus objectives. These are for the N10-008 exam. You can, of course, read about the exam, the accreditation, how it's developed, their materials use policy. Please note the test details, the objectives, etc. But where you should focus is starting with the bullets. Start with Domain 1, Networking Fundamentals, Subdomain 1.1, compare and contrast the Open Systems Interconnection, OSI, model layers, and encapsulation concepts. And we have here the layers, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, 5, 6, and 7, physical, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, application. Those are your first 7 bullets. There's another bullet here, data encapsulation and decapsulation within the OSI model context, including the Ethernet header, IP header, transmission control protocol, TCP, and user datagram protocol, UDP headers, TCP flags, payload, and maximum transmission unit, MTU. All right, before you do anything else with your studies, this is where you focus. Those are your bullets. That's the section. Wizard, Lil Fear, you've now won. You're the winner with your wizard answer. You have now disrupted the entire question and answer session because Lil Fear, if I missed it earlier with someone else, I apologize. That was it. It was the wizard. Thank you so much. Now I can sleep tonight. So as you are studying, I really feel like we need some type of balloons falling from the ceiling or something on this. It really was wizard for working through this. Let's say you're now studying for your third effort into Network Plus. You have gone through videos. You've read some books. You've maybe done some hands-on. There are a lot of great labs out there. I love the CertMaster labs. I do. CertMaster labs are solid. So that might be another good one. The The one that you have in this list, though, these bullets here, this is where you focus. Don't worry about the rest of the exam. There's another 400 or so bullets you have to worry about later. Let's just look at these. Go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go through the different OSI models, understand the differences between them, understand what lives at what layer. If somebody says, here's an IP address, what layer is that? Here's TCP port 80, what layer is that? You need to be able to do that fast. Be able to know and have a real good understanding of how the real world, as much as I hate that term, how the physical world around us correlates back to this very broad and in some cases contradicting OSI model. That's where we go. We can fight about the layers sometimes because we just, no, it's in layer 2. No, it's in layer 1. No, it's in layer 2. No, it's layer 1. We can fight about it, sure, but know how that fits in there and what those different layers are for. Then move to understanding the Ethernet header. Have you tried Wireshark? Go grab Wireshark. If you ever want to learn the OSI model, Wireshark. You'll start Wireshark up the first time. You'll have no idea what it's doing. But then you start recognizing things. Oh, there's an IP address. There's a MAC address. Wait, it shows it in sort of this layered view. Oh, it shows the signal on the wire. It shows a MAC address. It shows an IP address. It shows a TCP port number, and it shows application data. It literally shows the OSI model on the screen as part of the protocols that are going across your network right now. It's a great learning tool. So you can view the Ethernet header. You can view the IP header. You can look at TCP and UDP headers to get an understanding of how do they fit together in that Russian doll of encapsulation that we do in networking. How do all of these things fit together? And you should have an understanding of that and be able to explain it to someone else. What's a TCP flag? Give me an example of a TCP flag. When would you see TCP flags? Wireshark will tell you. Payloads. What's a payload? It's in Wireshark too. In a maximum transmission unit, which may not be obvious in Wireshark, but something you definitely need to know about. It's a bullet in this list as well. So just focus on this. Get a complete understanding of all of these bullets so that you could explain to someone else or to yourself in a mirror or to a stuffed animal. So Sparky, here's what an MTU is. You could tell Sparky what the MTU is. So that is where you should focus. And I really think you don't go anywhere else until you get these down. Use these as a checklist, check them off. Once you are familiar with those topics, slide down to section 1.2. Explain the characteristics of network topologies and network types and just go down the bullets. Same process. Nothing changes with the process. You take it a bullet at a time. The way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. This is a couple elephants. This is a big elephant. And you just a bite at a time. Will this take a long time? Yes. Is it sometimes frustrating that it's so large? Yes. It's a big elephant. This, though, tells you everything you need to know. The exam stays to this list almost exclusively, to the point that I've told you before, and I will say it many times, if you know every bullet that is on this list, you will easily pass your exam. Easily pass your exam. So this is your exam objectives. Let's go to the front page of this. Go to CompTIA's website. You can find this. Go to professormesser.com/objectives or simply go to your favorite search engine. Type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll be your first link. It's free. It's downloadable from the CompTIA website. That's what you use to pass your exam. If you are frustrated with the process, if you're trying to work your way through the process, if you're maybe just taking your exam for the very first time, it's the same process. This isn't just for people that have gone through the exam before. This is your study guide. The exam is everything in this list. It's not an overview. It's a detailed bullet by bullet representation of everything you could possibly be asked on the exam. That's how important this is. Get your copy of the CompTIA exam objectives. That's how you pass it the third time through. And you will. The third time through, you're going to pass it if you follow that path, if you keep going down that path and understanding it. So make sure you're familiar with it. And folks in the chat room are saying, well, I have my exam Friday. Do you think I should go the exam? I don't know. How many of those bullets did you did you check that you knew, and how many of the bullets did you circle that you did not? Now, if 10% of this exam you don't know yet, maybe you study a little bit more until you know 95% of it. Or maybe you find that, oh, there's more here I didn't know than I thought. So if you could even just very quickly go through this entire thing and circle, yep, know it, know it, know it, don't know it, don't know it, know it, know it, know it, don't know it. You can circle these things so that at the end of this, you can go back through it and go, maybe there's more to this I don't know than I thought. And be very honest with yourself. This is not your chance to skirt the objectives or to get around not having to study. That's not what the point of this is. The point is to really understand, how much of this do I know? At what level am I really prepared for this exam? You know, that brute honesty is going to serve you very well when it comes to taking the exam, because the more prepared you are, the easier this exam becomes. It is remarkable. I will see people sometimes tell me that, oh, your course was okay, but it was way too easy because I just walked into the exam and it was a cakewalk. Like, no, that's not the way it works. We built you a training program that focused on these objectives. And as it turns out, that's what they asked you. Hopefully it did seem easy. Hopefully it did seem like a cakewalk. That's the idea. That means you were prepared. That means you did the hard work. That means you really did watch, study, and understand these bullets. And if you do that, you're not going to have any problem passing this exam. It should seem easy. It should be a cakewalk. You should be through it in 45 minutes, half the time. Spend the rest of the time double checking your questions, hit submit, take your certification home, go get that job or go get that better job. That's what you do with the exam objectives. Those bullets I just went through are from the official CompTIA Network Plus exam objectives, available on the CompTIA website at professormesser.com/objectives, or search through it. Your favorite search engine, just simply type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you right to them. It's a PDF. It's free to download, and it is exactly what you should be using to study. You can see I was even doing a lot of work in here. I was color coding things. It's a PDF. You can write on it. You can modify it. And I was really going through and making some changes, updating different things. That's what I would really focus on. So hopefully that is what you are familiar with as well. And now I can tell you that I think is your best bet to be able to pass this exam. You don't need to buy routers. You don't need to buy switches. You're not going to be asked to configure a router. You're not going to be asked to configure a switch. And even then, most certifications that you're going to have as entry level, you don't need a switch or router either. Everything you can do in Packet Tracer, for that matter. Packet Tracer is Cisco's virtualized version of routers and switches. You don't have to go buy physical routers and switches anymore. You can do it all online. It's all in a VM, effectively. This is more of an emulated environment, but similar idea. You can build out an entire infrastructure in Packet Tracer, set up your configurations, your routes, your switches, your VLANs, connect it all together and see if it works. It's a remarkable application. Now, if you had the money sitting around and you wanted to buy switches and routers, I still think it's a waste, but it's the same thing. Online and Packet Tracer is much more efficient, much faster, many more products available, many more operating systems and routers and switches and voice over IP phones and in stations. There's much more flexibility than ever having physical devices. Only when you get into more of the higher level certs within Cisco do you ever need to think about purchasing hardware these days. So go to the bullets. Focus on what's in the exam objectives. If it's not in the objectives, don't study it. I can't tell you how many people have shown up for our events or on our chat, and they say, well, my instructor gave me these 3 pages of 250 port numbers, and he says I need to know this for the exam. I said, why did they tell you that? Because if you look at the exam objectives and you were to count the number of port numbers in the exam objectives, it is, and I'll count also the protocols with multiple ports. Let's count how many. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, that's the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Oh, went too far. 26, 27, 20, 29. So about 30 port numbers we need to know that span about 32, 34 protocols. That's what we need to know for Network Plus. And that's it. That is the list. You don't need to know more than this. You certainly don't need to know less than this. You need to know all of this. But it stops at that list of 30. There are no more that we need beyond this. And anybody who tells you that you need 250 of these is definitely unfamiliar with the testing process. Make sure you go to the exam objectives. It is your best way to study for this exam. I think that would be a very good place for you to spend your time. Don't waste your time learning things that aren't in that list. Do not waste your time learning things that are not in that list. I will also tell you that if you do that, if you go back to your instructor and you say, why did you give me a list of 250 things? And they will say, well, did you read the exam objectives? It tells you right there. It has a please note on the first page. The lists of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objective may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. See, you need to know all 250 of those port numbers because they could ask you that. Well, they could. Do they? No, they don't, actually. They never do. This is, I think, the lawyers working overtime and telling you that maybe we ask you one question on the exam that's a little different and we'll see how you answer it and we'll put that into our list of data that we're collecting on you. But this particular view is very unusual. If you ever find anything on your exam that's not listed in this exam objectives, it's like a unicorn. They never show up. They stated this list so tight that I can tell you that if you spend your time just learning what's in this list, you will pass your exam easily. That's the focus. So I think that is exactly where you should go in understanding the details of what's expected of you. And if you know what's in the exam objectives, then you know exactly what is expected of you. It is the best way to study for your exam, bar none. There's no better way to study for this exam than the objectives. Make sure you get very, very familiar with it. And in fact, you should know that somebody will say, oh, I'm studying port numbers. Oh, that's section 2.1, port numbers. Yeah, you need to know those 30 port numbers. You should know it that well so that you could really focus on those pieces of it. You will find other training courses out there that go outside the scope of those exam objectives. You will find books out there that go beyond the scope of these exam objectives. Waste of time as far as the certification is involved. Is it useful to know things outside the scope of what's included on a specific certification exam? Of course it is. That's not what we're saying. We're saying to pass this exam from CompTIA called Network Plus N10-008, you need to stick to the exam objectives for the N10-008 for CompTIA. That's what we're saying. There are reasons for doing that, and those are the best reasons for passing this exam. Now, if you're just looking for a generic, I just want to learn about network and I don't care about the certification exam, well, that's fine too. But most of us here, I think, are really focused on getting that certification. And if that's the case, stick to the objectives and I think you'll do fine. That is the best advice I can give you. And that's the one that has worked over and over and over for everyone who has visited our site, who has watched our video course and has earned their Network Plus certification. And if you would like to earn your Network Plus, I think that's your best strategy as well. Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We have enjoyed the Q&A in our first hour. Thank you so much for being here for that. And thanks for your questions in the second hour as well. Come on back next week. Normally we do our Security Plus study groups on a Wednesday. Next week, our Security Plus study group is on Thursday. So feel free to stop back by on Thursday of next week. I have all new questions for you that come from the SY0701 Security Plus exam objectives. And we always have a good time with that. We also have another Network Plus study group already scheduled for July. We hope you join us then as well. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.